I'm so glad you could join me. I'm Melissa with Sentimental Salvage and Design, and today we're going to be applying a brand new paint inlay by Orchid Designs called Queen of the Nile. She fits perfectly on one of these 36 by 48 inch canvases from Michaels. Let's get started. So this big white canvas needed some color. So here I'm blending 3 different DIY paint colors. The darkest being weathered wood, then prairie gray, and then faded burlap. And I'm wanting it to be a little bit darker on the edges and fading to lighter in the middle. And this is just a base coat, so I'm not super concerned about perfection or anything. I just need to get the paint on and blend it out. Once that base coat dried, I went back over it again using the same colors, but this time I'm using my swirl blending method to create almost like an old world stone finish, both in a visual and a physical texture. It's subtle, but it's still there. That texture is still there, and it turns out really nice. Then I just simply plan out my placement, see how she's going to fit on this big canvas, and then I tape it together. With the inlay all taped together, I decided to work on half at a time. So I hinge it over, and now I'm able to apply my DIY Paint clear patina on the canvas. Try to make sure that you have a nice even coat. Trying to work fairly quickly because you don't want the patina to dry. You need it to be wet for the inlay to stick. Now I've got my mama here helping me flip this over without making a mess. And then I'm just smoothing it all down into the patina. Using a brayer helps you get everything smushed down. You need that paint inlay to sit into that clear patina. There's a little bit of dry spot right in the center seam, so I'm just adding a little bit more patina in there to get that down. And now this step, you're misting it with water. This helps the inlay release from the backing paper and be able to adhere into that clear patina. So I just give it a good mist, not sopping wet, but it's just easier and faster to use the mister bottle. And then I have a wet cloth and I just go over and I pat down the entire image. Just to make sure that I'm getting that inlay pushed down into that patina. And now we're gonna let this dry. Okay, so it's dry now. And me being the impatient person that I am, I dried it. I sped it up with a heat tool / blow dryer, so I could actually finish my project and see what it looked like. Working one sheet at a time, I'm going to use my mister bottle to spritz it all down with water, and then I take my wet microfiber cloth. It's damp, and I'm just going to push that inlay down again. This is releasing it from the backing paper so that you can pull that backing paper off and your inlay, hopefully, will be sitting on your surface. Now gently pull back on this backing paper. This is where I realized things were about to go terribly wrong. So you can see on this how much paint is coming off with my inlay. Not what I want to be happening. So in my mind I'm thinking, well, it's not wet enough, so let's add some more water. Because you can see it's tearing a little bit on these edges, so that's what made me think that it wasn't wet enough. So I continue removing this paper and see how much of the inlay is being left on this backing paper along with all of the paint that's coming off. The inlay is not staying on my surface, on my painted canvas. At this point, my brain still hasn't figured out what I've done wrong. Watching it now, I know exactly what I did wrong, but live and learn, right? I really wish I could tell you what was going through my head at this point, but I honestly have no idea. I had done the Gregory's catalog paint inlay, which was also a large one, and I'd used the exact same method, except for one very important part that hadn't clicked in my brain at this point. I just kept adding water. I don't know why. It's like, at this point, it's like watering a dead plant. It's over. Leave it alone. But I couldn't get it. So instead of being smart about this, I went and removed all of the backing paper on the whole piece. And basically it was just a complete and utter fail. You can really see here, it all comes off on the backing paper, like the inlay is not releasing into the paint. And I'm not sure what I had done wrong at this point, and I'm just too annoyed to just stop and think and just leave it be. So I just keep yarding these papers off, effectively ruining my whole inlay. So as I get ready for round 2 with the Queen of the Nile inlay, let's recap what happened. What I discovered the problem is that I didn't let it dry properly. I hurried it up with the heat tool because I was impatient, and effectively what that did was just dry the surface. Paint inlays are made out of a chalk style paint, and they are formulated to be inlaid into a chalk style paint. So when your base is a blended surface, regardless of whether it is a canvas like I'm doing here, or whether it's a piece of furniture that you've created this beautiful blended finish on, or anything like that, you're not going to want to cover that up with a fresh coat of paint to put on your inlay. So we go to a clear coat. That clear coat then becomes the medium that we use to apply the paint inlay to the painted surface. And if, like me, you have not let your painted surface dry completely before you go ahead with all of this inlay stuff, when you then try to pull your backing paper off to leave your inlay behind, it basically pulls everything up. So what was happening was that the paint was not completely dry. It was dry to the touch, but it was not completely dry. And when I applied the clear patina on the top, that reactivated the paint, which made it even more damp. Then I put the inlay on and added water, and then I dried it quickly with a heat tool, and it wasn't technically dry. And then I wet it again, thinking more water, more water, more water. That's my problem, and that was not the problem. It was just making everything worse. So lesson learned. Let's try this again. After my round 1 failure, I sanded the canvas and repainted it. I did the whole blending thing all over again to give it that look that I wanted. This time I'm just laying it down sheet by sheet. I'm not doing it all as one big sheet again. I am just individually putting the sheets down. I've got a good idea on how it was supposed to sit on the canvas, so I'm just kind of measured it out, and I'm just gonna go for it this way. I'm using the crystal clear patina again to apply the inlay. Sheet by sheet, let's get her done. I had a bit of a problem lining up this sheet. What I had done was the top sheet, the one that says the Nile on it, that one's crooked, and I don't know why I didn't see it, but it's just slightly on a little bit of an angle. So it's totally messed up this one, which needs to line up. So I lined it up perfectly on the middle, and then I had a little bit of gap in the word potions, which I knew that would be easier for me to fix than to fix on the queen herself. So I just went with my little gap. You'll see it. Once I get this paper down, you'll see the gap in the word potions. Yeah, I fight with this for a little while, trying to line that up. And you're kind of working in a hurry because you don't want your patina to dry, so it's... Finally, I'm just like, well, whatever, I'll fix that later. Again, I'm going over with the divider sheets that come in your inlay, because I don't want there to be brush strokes or a really distinctly different texture on these edges outside of the inlay sheets. And I'm just pressing it down and then peeling it back up, and it's just changing that texture. This part honestly becomes kind of not needed, because I do go over the edges with paint again to blend them out and to add texture again. Okay, so we're all applied, and now we are going to dampen it to help that inlay release from the backing paper and sit into our clear patina. So I'm giving it a good dose with my spritzer bottle, and now going over it again with a damp cloth to really push it in. You can use a microfiber cloth, you can use a sock if you want, you can use paper towel, anything to just dampen that paper and get it in there. All right, it is all done, applied, and now I'm gonna let it sit overnight. I'm not touching it, I'm not gonna try to speed it up. I'm gonna be patient this time and let it just sit overnight and dry really, really well. So here we are next morning. So it had a good, I'd say 14, 16 hours to dry. And now I'm misting it with water. And now I'm going to go over it with my damp cloth. And this pulls up any extra water. I don't want it to be sitting there sopping wet. And I probably used maybe a little bit too much water than you needed to. And here we go, the moment of truth. So far, so good. The inlay is actually on the canvas. It's not bringing everything back up, including the paint. I should mention that it is normal for the inlays to pick up paint, so don't worry about little bits of paint being on your backing paper. One sheet off and it looks perfect. Okay, we're on sheet number 2. I've already spritzed it with water, and now I am using the microfiber cloth to push that inlay down, and we'll see if we have success on the second one as well. Some areas along the edges, the paper would tear. I wasn't super concerned about that. I go on after and get rid of those little bits of paper. I was more worried about the main image. And this seems to be working perfectly this time, so I'm super excited. And now I continue the same process for all the remaining sheets. This is where I just took a wet cloth and I came around and I wiped any spots that had little bits of torn paper that had stuck to the canvas. And I just wiped them off, being careful not to go through my paint. If you remember where I had to go back now and fix the word potions because of my crooked placement, I'm just taking DIY paint in Little Black Dress and a tiny little paintbrush, and I'm just filling in that gap that you can see there. Remember that these inlays are created using a chalk style paint, so you can do any little repairs like this using chalk paint. Now she's all dry, and I've made a mixture in a mister bottle of 50/50 water and Big Top, which is DIY Paint's clear coat, giving it a light mist over the whole piece. This seals in the inlay without having to brush over it, which would likely smear it. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. So this method of the 50/50 Big Top and water is the best way to get this done. The reason it kind of looks blotchy is that the DIY patina is on there because that's what we use to apply the inlay. So those areas are not grabbing onto the Big Top right away. It'll all even out in the end, so no worries. Okay, so I've applied my 2 coats of my spray-on sealer. And now I want to blend in these edges a little bit more, just to make it look kind of more cohesive. So I'm taking the same colors that I had used initially to put the base on the canvas, and using that same swirl blending method, I'm going to go all around the edge of this canvas and create that finished edge. Okay, now that my edge is all finished, it's dry and looks kind of janky right now. I'm going to go over the whole piece now with a brush on coat of Big Top. I'm free to brush it on now because I've already sealed my inlay with 2 coats of my 50/50 Big Top and water mixture, and that was sprayed on. It's really important to do that as a spray so that you don't smear your inlay. Okay, so I'm still wanting to add a little bit of visual texture definition to this piece. So here I'm using DIY Paint's Dark and Decrepit, which is a patina as well. And I'm just going again with a little bit of a swirling motion with the patina, and then I go afterward with just a baby wipe, a wet wipe, and I kind of blot some of it off. And this creates kind of that old world rustic stone look, at least that's what I'm thinking I'm going for here. And once this all dries, you'll see how that just added a bit more definition and a little bit of warmth to the project. Now that my Dark and Decrepit layer is all dry, I'm going over and just adding little bits of copper just with my fingertip, and then same idea with the baby wipe, I'm just blotting it off. And it just gives you that rustic texture, visual texture, and adds a little bit of bling. There's no need to clear coat after the Dark and Decrepit or the Pennies from Heaven. These are patinas and they have a built-in top coat. And here she is, the Queen of the Nile. I'd like to thank you for watching this tutorial. This one comes with a bonus segment of what not to do. I hope you are inspired and it gets you going on your own project.